This is the Know Your Compliance podcast, the podcast about anti-money laundering and compliance with FinTrac, brought to you by Really Trusted. At the KYC podcast, we believe that knowledge protects and insights empower. And so we'll delve deep into what is happening in the world of anti-money laundering. We'll discuss the challenges that reporting entities are facing, the fines being levied, the tech being deployed, and everything else a compliance officer might want to know about. I'm your host, Greg Dent, and I'm excited to welcome you to another episode as the team and I interview guests and examine stories of real-life fraud and generally geek out to issues in compliance. As a disclaimer, the topics we discuss on this show are typically related to compliance with FinTrac. Nothing said on this show should be considered to be specific advice that can be directly used in your compliance program, as the host and our guests will not know your specific compliance situation. Any advice given should be considered to be for informational purposes only. Hello and welcome to a long overdue another episode of the Know Your Compliance podcast. Now, first of all, I want to say I am sorry it's taken us so long to record another episode. Part of it was that I've just been really busy myself, and part of it was that I was struggling to make sure that we produce only content that you actually want to listen to in this podcast. And for a bit there, I just wasn't sure what to say, so I said nothing. Now, I think we should have probably said some stuff between then and now, but here we are. It's been a year and we're back. Today, I want to delve into Bill C-12. Now, it's funny because the last episode we did was called Bill C-2, and indeed, Bill C-12 is kind of where part of Bill C-2 ended up. So let's talk about Bill C-12 today. Functionally, and obviously there was a long bill, lots of different pieces into that moving puzzle. But what I want to talk about today are the 4 pieces of it that are going to impact you in your FinTrac compliance programs. And the 4, just to give you kind of off the top, is the AMP increases, the administrative monetary penalty increases, the compliance agreements, the effectiveness, and the effectiveness ultimately of your program, and then the mandatory registration. Those are the pieces that I think as a business, as a reporting entity under FinTrac's regulations, that you're going to have to concern yourself with and things that you should already be grappling with. As we record this, it's currently June 15th. Bill C-12 took effect as of March 26th, so 3 out of those 4 pieces are already in effect right now. Let's get into it. Administrative monetary penalties, or fines, the fines that FinTrac levies against reporting entities. Well, good news, bad news. There actually is no good news on this one. The fines, the maximum fine for individuals used to be $100,000. It is now $4 million. The maximum fines for entities used to be $500,000. It is now $20 million. Those are substantial increases. Period. Full stop. No matter who you talk to. The one glimmer of hope in all of that for you folks is that that's only true for examinations that take into account programs after that March 26 royal assent on Bill C-12. So what that means is that even the current investigations that are being done right now or are about to be done right now are unlikely to be able to use those new fines. So what FinTrac has said is that they're going to use that March 26 as a cutoff. And as they're doing examinations, they're going to either review periods predating that or post-dating that, and they're going to not do reviews over top of that period. In other words, there'll be no before and after of that, which gives them a better clear answer as to what administrative monetary penalty policy will apply. And because we're June now, there really isn't a whole lot of program that's happened, of any particular program that's happened from March 27th, effectively, until mid-June. That's not a very big window of examination. And so FinTrac, even the current stuff, is unlikely to be evaluating that right now. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's coming, and examination soon, at some point in about 3 to 6 months by my math, will be fully after that implementation date. And so most examinations starting from that point will be able to use this new regime and this new penalty level. So functionally, that's the bad news, really, is it's coming. I will say that I think, and the other piece I wanted to mention on that is that means we're not likely to see any sort of reporting out, in other words, public notices on any of these new fines for a year at the absolute earliest, because typically what happens is that an examination takes, let's call it a couple of months. That findings letter might take another month or two. Publication doesn't typically happen for some number of months afterwards as well, and so we're probably talking a year and a half, in fact, before we see any public notices using the new thresholds of fines. Okay, that's enough on new fine levels. Let's talk about the more interesting, from a policy point of view, pieces of this puzzle. Let's talk about effectiveness. The concept of effectiveness is now something that on its face can be tested on its own. And that's an important distinction that in previous examinations, in previous worlds prior to Bill C-12, a FinTrac examiner might come in and say, okay, well, you have a documented business risk assessment, you have documented policies and procedures, you have a training plan, therefore we're going to tick that box. Now, and what that meant is that the onus was on the examiner to go into the transactional data, into the program delivery piece of your program, of your business, and be able to make the case that any one of those pieces were failing or had failed as a result of poor implementation. Now, on its own, the effectiveness itself is a tested criteria. So what that means is that if you've been using, say, a templated set of documents, you might have gotten away with it in previous years. It is extremely unlikely for you to be getting away with that in the future as a result of this effectiveness that's now layered into Bill C-12 as part of your obligations. If I want to put that more precisely, what that means is that along with the 5 pillars, there is now this overarching requirement for your FinTrac compliance program and its individual components to be effective in stopping or minimizing the chance of money laundering happening through your business. And if I really want to drill down for you, let's make it really real. If you're a real estate brokerage and you're using some association's templated documents and you've got that printed and on your shelf and you filled in your name and you filled in a couple of tick boxes throughout it, that's probably not going to pass muster as a compliant program. And by probably, I mean, I'm almost sure of that. I just don't want to say that to you. Conceptually, though, effectiveness becomes really important. And I think it's not that hard. It sounds like really difficult to get to. If you do the work and you think through what you're doing and you really conceptualize it using the National Inherent Risk Assessment and your business, and you layer all that into a really good business risk assessment, the rest will fall out quite easily. But you got to do the work. And that's where, I mean, by the way, you can get help in doing that work. Obviously, we spend our lives doing that at Really Trusted, but the concept here of effectiveness now being a thing on its own and as being a tested criteria on its own is worth you thinking about. Let's talk about compliance agreements. That's the next piece, the third of the 4 pieces that have come in as a part of Bill C-12. Compliance agreements are their own piece of the puzzle. Now, this has happened informally prior to Bill C-12. It often took the vocabulary of action plans is how we'd see that show up in findings letters coming out of examinations. Now what's happened is that the action plan concept has been more formalized in the terms of a compliance agreement. Now, the beautiful thing for FinTrac and the terrible thing for you as a business as a result of this is that the compliance agreement on its own can now be published. Now, obviously, this hasn't happened yet. This whole framework hasn't, as I previously explained, hasn't been tested or actually done in real life just yet because of the requirement to bridge that March 26th date. But we will soon see what that looks like. It is my expectation that FinTrac expects to use compliance agreements both as a tool for correcting where that reporting entity is deficient, but also as a tool for providing unofficial guidance in the form of findings from examinations so that the sectors can be more in line with their expectations. So I think The short version of this is there will be some brokerages, some businesses across the country whose names are published as being in violation of whatever piece of the compliance program, who aren't necessarily getting administrative monetary penalties as a result of that. And I think as a result of that, we will see more and more businesses get into a more compliant position. My observation here actually is I think this was a really smart move. If I'm being transparent with you, unfortunately, I think this was a really smart move on the point of the regulator, or from the part of the regulator. And I say that because my observation has been that there are many times where if you dig into a fine, administrative monetary penalty that was levied, and if you go and dig into that program and you talk with the people, you see that in fact they had previously received indications that their program wasn't entirely deficient, was somewhat deficient, or it wasn't entirely up to par. They had received a findings letter from one examination, and rather than deal with it, they had chosen to ignore it, or put their hand in the sand, or pay lip service to solving it by writing a document that said la la la, I don't know, training plan or business risk assessment, and had a few pieces on it, but really wasn't actually doing the work of the document that was intended to be done. So overall, I think this is a really good thing from the regulator's point of view. I think it'll end up being better for the sectors as well, because we'll end up with more guidance and more instruction from the regulator as to what their expectations are, and therefore how we can move towards being in a better position of compliance. Okay, I've left the last one because this is the piece that I've made the case why these previous ones aren't actually yet fully enforced. From a technical point of view, they are in force. They just haven't been applied in a real life setting, to my knowledge, yet. And it seems unlikely that the regulator will be able to apply them in a real life setting for another couple of months at least, because they're going to want to have, they could, there's nothing stopping them per se, but they're going to want to have a big enough sampling window for that to be relevant. And so again, from you'd be looking at an April 1 to June 12th review period. That's just not substantial enough to be interesting for maybe it is. And if they were going after one particular piece of data, they absolutely could. Anyhow, my point on all of this is that the previous three things in effect, but sort of not yet tested yet. The last one, the registration piece, is absolutely not in effect. And that's primarily because the framework, the mechanism, all of those things haven't been created yet by FinTrac ultimately. So what does registration actually look like? First of all, it's not just having an account on the FinTrac web reporting system. I've had a few people tell me that that's what they thought it was. And they said, oh yeah, no, we're already registered. That's absolutely not what registration is. There is one sector that there is a registration concept that already is in effect. That's the money services business. And for the money services business, registration looks like having to fill in a whole bunch of information about the corporation, the directors, have criminal record checks for those directors, and submit that. I think it's on a biannual basis for those reporting entities. Conceptually, what this is going to look like for real estate, for mortgage brokerages, for jewelers, for all of these new sectors that now have a registration requirement, is that they're going to have to do something proactively every couple of years, probably, to maintain their registration status with FinTrac. And just to make this really clear, what I think is interesting about this is this really highlights that FinTrac is a regulator of yours. It might feel like for real estate brokerages, we run into this all the time. They say, oh no, BCFSA is our regulator, or RICO is our regulator. And they're right. What they miss is that they are also regulated by FinTrac. You actually have two regulators. I think the requirement for registration is going to make this really crystal clear for all of those reporting entities. And the reason I say that is because what has happened in the money services business is that some money services businesses have had their FinTrac registration revoked, which essentially closes the doors for that business immediately. And I expect that FinTrac will have the exact same abilities and capabilities as a result of this new registration requirement. What is exactly going to look like? Who knows? There's going to be some sort of an online site where you're going to have to go and provide some amount of detail around your business, what you do. You might have to provide some detail around your FinTrac compliance program, the structure of it, who knows exactly. But functionally, the end result is that every single reporting entity in every single sector is going to have to be registered in FinTrac's database. Now, incidentally, what I've just said is why it doesn't exist yet. This is a massive administrative problem that FinTrac is going to have to create a system for, some sort of program for, some sort of probably some sort of website for. I can't even begin to imagine the amount of work involved, and I'm quite glad to not have to do it myself. But the point is that they're going to have to create all of that before they can actually launch that into the sector. It is in the regs. It is as a result of Bill C-12 law, but it is not in effect until such a time as FinTrac has an opportunity to have a mechanism for delivering that, at which point they will have to publish they'll have to publish it by orders of council, and then it will be in effect. So it's not actually technically in effect yet, but it is coming, 100% coming. It's just a matter of when, not if. The one thing I haven't said about registration that I think is worth a brief comment on is that registration is going to create a bit of an administrative headache for all of the reporting entities. From our work with the sectors we work in, which, we have a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, this is going to be just one more bureaucratic little paper cut that they have to live with. And I think that's unfortunate. I truly do, but I think it's going to be something else that they're going to have to figure out. And for our clients, we're going to help you with that. Our hope is that we're going to be able to just do it for them. Again, we don't know what it looks like yet, so I can't promise that. But that's certainly our hope, and that's our expectation as things move forward, that we'll be able to kind of help them through that and or just deliver it as a, here you are now registered kind of a thing. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's the end of my thoughts on Bill C-12. Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you sticking around and paying attention to me talking about some pretty fun, in my view, legislation and thoughts around the world. Please stay tuned to the podcast. If you haven't yet subscribed, please go do so. I promise you, we're about to put out a whole bunch more new content, new fun content, that if you're into this, you're going to love the next bunch of stuff that we've got coming out. It is our intention to kind of start doing this on a much more regular basis. No more of these 12-month gaps is my plan here. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching if you're watching, and have a wonderful day. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Know Your Compliance podcast. If you'd like more information about our guests, have a story idea, or want to be a guest, please reach out to hello@kycpodcast.com. If you want to discuss your anti-money laundering compliance needs with a member of the Really Trusted team, go to www.reallytrusted.com/consult.